All right, so I got this very cool new toy. It's called a BirdFy Nest. Essentially, it's a nest box for birds, and it has two cameras on it that stream over Wi-Fi, so you can sort of monitor what's going on from an app on your phone. Here's a quick shot of the app showing the live feed. You can see the outside of the camera is on the right, and the inside camera is on the left. I'm pretty excited about it, and of course, my natural instinct is just to sort of find the nearest tree and hang it and see what happens. After all, it's like my new toy, and I want it to work now. But then I read that there's some considerations like how high to hang it, whether you put it in a tree or in a field, which direction it should face. It also comes with these wooden inserts so you can change the size of the entrance hole. And then someone was like, oh yeah, and make sure you protect against predators. Then I sort of got in my head and I was like, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of work to figure all that out. And so the box just sat in my office for about a month. But I finally psyched myself into doing the work to figure some of these things out and found out it's really not all that complicated. So I'm going to share what I've learned. So these were really the main considerations in terms of setting up the nest box, because some birds like to nest at different times of the year. Also, some like a smaller entry hole in the box, some like a larger one, and then some like to have a nest box that's up high, some like it down low, some like it in a field, some like it near trees. And then I also read that there's about a 7% increase in likelihood of success if you protect your nest box from predators. So to work all this out, I found this really great resource with Cornell Labs called their NestWatch program. I'll put a link in the description because they have a great interactive website that had pretty much all the information I needed. It shows which birds will take to nest boxes, which birds might be found in my area. It even has plans if you want to build your own nest box. In each bird species, it breaks down details about placement, orientation, hole size, height, and other considerations. So it turned out that most of these decisions for setting it up came down to which bird species I wanted to attract. All right, so since this is a fancy camera-enabled nest box, I really wanted to pick a target species that has a high likelihood of actually showing up. So I decided to pick from one of the types of birds that I already see in my yard or in my bird feeders. I've only been tracking this for a little bit, but so far I've seen goldfinches, robins, cardinals, a couple species of woodpeckers, nuthatches, titmice, bluebirds, and chickadees. So I did a little research on each of these and found out that goldfinches, robins, and cardinals, they're open cup nesters. So that means that they nest in trees or shrubs, and they're just not going to take to a nest box. I also found out that woodpeckers prefer to make their own cavities in dead trees, so while it's possible they might use a nest box, they're just not as likely to take to it as some of the other birds. Nuthatches might use nest boxes if there's no natural tree cavities available, but they are pickier and generally prefer tree cavities and natural dead tree wood when given the choice, and I have a good bit of that on my property. Titmice, I read, can be skittish and territorial, so if there's a nesting pair already somewhere on the property and they don't use the box, they might chase away potential titmice tenants out of the box, so they're out too. So then it comes down to chickadees and bluebirds. I really wanted to decide to target bluebirds, but from what I've read, they can be a little more skittish and also more territorial. I've also seen a lot more chickadees than bluebirds at my feeders, and they also tend to be more curious and less skittish. All right, so there it is. Chickadees are the target. As for the bluebirds and the other species, I do plan to make a bunch of nest boxes and put them up around the property, but they just aren't going to have cameras in them. That'll be a subject for another video. All right, now that we've picked the species, let's adjust the question of placement, orientation, and hole size. There's a lot of great information on the internet, and I just went back to Cornell Labs' NestWatch site and found all the info that I needed to have the best chance of attracting a chickadee. So after looking up all of the details I needed to actually deploy the nest box, I realized that while some of it was pretty straightforward, like which hole size insert to choose, some of it I wasn't quite sure about, like how to protect against predators. Again, the Cornell website had a lot of great information, and the recommendation was to mount the nest box on a pole, which would be easier to fasten various protection devices. They even had designs for a few different methods of protecting the nest box. The first is called a stovepipe baffle, which is basically a cylinder that goes over the mounting pole. The second option is called a Noel guard, which is really a wire mesh that prevents critters like raccoons and squirrels from sticking their grubby little hands into the nest box in search of eggs. The third design is a cone-shaped baffle that makes it impossible for these critters to climb the pole to even access the box. You can buy these online, but I decided to fabricate one from some sheet metal that I had, and I'll show that next. The next thing I had to figure out was the direction of the prevailing winds. I really wasn't sure what direction the prevailing winds are in my area, but that was also pretty easy to look up. I found a site called WeatherSpark that shows month by month the direction of the winds as a stacked line graph. I'll add a link to that in the description. So it seems that in my area, the prevailing winds shift quite a lot, but it seems like easterly winds were the least frequent during the nesting season of April through July. So I'll be facing the nest box to the east. This has the added advantage of giving the box the morning sun to help warm things up from the chilly nights in my area. So now I know what I need to do, I just have to go ahead and do it. And here you go. Got my riveting gun. Got some C-clamps. Got my drill bit. My drill. See how it goes. Alright, so what I'm going to do is make a conical buffer. Nope. Conical baffle. Bleh. What I'm going to do is make a conical baffle. And I have this piece of sheet metal, this like HVAC ducting that I'm going to use. You can buy these in a store. I'm just showing you that you can kind of DIY it, and yeah, I'll probably fast forward it, but here we go. Alright, I really considered cutting this from the video because it's not very informative, but I was low-key proud of myself for hacking something like this together. I basically just drilled holes and put in some pop rivets, and then used some duct tape to protect the edges, which were kind of sharp. So the first thing I had to do was pick the location. I found this nice spot towards the back of the property. It's east facing, it's on the edge between some trees and some clear space, and I have this nice little brush pile on the left that a rabbit lives in. Plus, as I walked by the section, I saw a bunch of chickadees in the trees to the left, so I'm going to bet that it'll be a good location. So now it was time to hammer in the post. I marked the post with a Sharpie at about the 3-foot mark. That way I could make sure that I drove it deep enough into the ground. I also brought a level with me to make sure I did my best to make the post plumb. I switched out the insert so I had the right hole size and just basically put everything together. I made sure to put the baffle over the pole first, and then the nest box went up, and then the solar panel. Lastly, I adjusted the height of the baffle using a clamp that was bigger than the hole in the top of the baffle. I added some leaf litter and wood chips to the box since I read that can attract chickadees, and now it's just time to wait. So there you have it. Let's see if we get any visitors.